It is 2 a.m. in Kyiv, Ukraine, on what very possibly could be Invasion Eve. As we speak, Russian cyber attacks continue to hit that country. Good evening, I'm Leland Vittert. Why what appeared to be a Russian blink this morning now looks an awful lot like a head fake. Plus, the man accused of shooting a Kentucky politician is a Black Lives Matter and gun control activist. Why those salient details appear missing from so much of the coverage. But first, President Biden put America on a war footing this afternoon, despite Russian assurances this morning that their troops were heading home after winter exercises.
The Russian defense minister reported today that some military units are leaving their positions near Ukraine. That would be good, but we have not yet verified that. We have not yet verified the Russian military units are returning to their home bases. Indeed, our analysts indicate that they remain very much in a threatening position.
Commercial satellite pictures show Russian jets lined up, ready to fight, along with military helicopters that are ready for an attack, suggesting Putin's nod to lowering tensions was a page out of his old KGB playbook and giving his spokeswoman an easy layup for this statement. February 15th, 2022, says the Russians will go into history as the day Western war propaganda failed. They have been disgraced and destroyed without a single shot being fired. And there it is. There it is, Putin's true mission, humiliating the United States. Vladimir Putin is time and time again making the White House, State Department, and U.S. military look silly and enjoying every minute of it. This isn't partisan. He successfully humiliated President Bush, President Obama, and President Trump at different moments during their time in the White House. Each American leader, including President Biden, came to power thinking they could outsmart the Russian strongman, or at least understood Putin's game. Each time, Putin's willingness for cruelty and complete disregard for the usual rules put Russia on top. President Biden is stuck. He must respond to every move that Putin makes, but that only shows American cards. Send troops to Europe, like the 101st Airborne deploying today, and Russia learns how fast America can respond. Warn the world of Putin's intentions as he builds up forces, and the Russian security services figure out where our intelligence comes from.
While I will not send American servicemen to fight in Ukraine, we have supplied the Ukrainian military with equipment to help them defend themselves. We provided training and advice and intelligence for the same purpose. And make no mistake, the United States will defend every inch of NATO territory.
NATO is a big part of the issue here. America and our allies bested the Soviet Union. We'll show you the map of NATO before the fall of the Berlin Wall. Evidently, we don't have that map. Here is NATO today, from Estonia and Latvia in the north through Poland, all the way down through Hungary and Bulgaria. They are all now members of NATO, aligned against Russia. It's humiliating to Vladimir Putin. He believes the fall of the Soviet Union is a great injustice that he will avenge by taking Ukraine. You can see Ukraine where the word for Romania is on that map. It expands Russia, humiliates NATO, and lets the world question if American friendship is worth the paper it's written on. Hence, President Biden speaking directly today to the Russian people.
To the citizens of Russia, you are not our enemy. And I do not believe you want a bloody, destructive war against Ukraine, a country and a people with whom you share such deep ties of family, history, and culture.
Here's where things get a little tricky for Mr. Putin. Invade Ukraine, and President Biden promises crippling sanctions that would then threaten the Russian economy, something Putin cares about to the extent it might affect his ability to rule the country. What he cares about the most is his own personal wealth. In fact, Putin may be richer than Jeff Bezos. This is one of his many mansions and villas. Also richer than Elon Musk, depending on how you add up his wealth. Worth hundreds of billions of dollars hidden in Swiss bank accounts, hidden in Dubai, hidden in Panama, and taken care of by a close-knit ring of Russian oligarchs. Remember, Putin calls himself president of Russia. In reality, he is the czar, the king. And listen to President Biden describing the promised sanctions.
The United States and our allies and partners around the world are ready to impose powerful sanctions on export controls, including actions that we did not pursue. when Russia invaded Crimea in eastern Ukraine in 2014.
We will see if Putin and his fellow billionaire oligarchs believe America will individually target their wealth. Individually, if it happens, Putin's calculus emphasis could change. Major Mike Lyon spent much of his Army career in Europe confronting the Russian threat and joins us now. Good to see you, sir. Is there an eventuality where Putin gets the spoils of war, what he wants, without the cost of a war?
Yeah, I think so. It's classic Sun Tzu. In fact, if you win that without firing a shot, it's what you try to do. He's massed these troops along the border. They've been there for a few months now. I've got to say, though, things have got to be challenging for those Russian soldiers across that border. You look at pictures that come back. They're in the middle of a cold winter. There's probably not being taken care of like they should be. So I think he is running out of time. But if he continues to push America and NATO with regard to getting a promise that Ukraine will never become part of NATO, which is really us saying the quiet part out loud, because they never will become part of NATO anyway. The Germans nor the French will allow that to happen. And the question is, whether or not we'll do that. And if we capitulate to that, then he'll take a victory and go from there.
Yeah, but if we capitulate today, doesn't he know that next year he can put his troops on the border in February and get something else?
Yeah, I think that's what we've got to be concerned about. Now, again, nobody wants to see this happen. And the level of troops, he's got 150,000. We just haven't seen this in history. Something that the Middle Eastern countries used to do during the 70s, and as a way to try to bankrupt Israel, they'd move troops to the border. You've got to think, again, on the other side, the Ukraine, the country, has to be focused on a potential attack that could happen. Their economy is suffering from this right now as well. So this is how he's going to roll unless he gets some other kind of agreement. No missiles in, like, say, Romania. His intent is to split up NATO and decide and create divisiveness within NATO. Now, I thought the president today gave a very strong speech. However, I would describe it as big if true. He projected a level of alliance that I just am not sure is the case. And you could tell because each of the different countries' leaders have gone separately to talk to Vladimir Putin. So unlike in the past where alliances and these coalitions have got to get together before, we're just kind of relying on the DNA of NATO to respond when this comes. And I'm just not sure that's going to be the case, especially with some of the larger NATO members like Germany.
Yeah, this certainly wasn't George H.W. Bush confronting Saddam Hussein, speaking effectively for the world. You make a good point about Germany. You've got the German chancellor, as feckless of a leader and as much of a coward as he is, off trying to negotiate on his own with Vladimir Putin. I'm wondering, if you're Putin, who are you listening to? The Germans who continue to kiss your rear end because they need your gas, or President Biden, who is, to your point, seemed big if true?
Yeah, I think it's more Germany. I think that he's making an economic decision about whether he attacks or not. And again, we're just projecting that we could shut that pipeline down. We're going to need our alliances to do that. So I'm just, again, not sure that that's something that we could guarantee. I know we could put certain sanctions on certain equipment. But the safety net for Vladimir Putin remains China, remains that economy in order to backstop anything that could happen. And that's part of his calculus. Now, the Germans have made a strategic mistake by outsourcing 30% of their energy to Russia. The fact that we got to this spot are mistakes that have been made from the past 20 years by NATO nations, by, in some cases, ourselves, by our foreign policy, with regard to how we were going to deal with this.
Yeah, why doesn't he just go for it?
Well, he might, and if he does that, we could expect Russia to completely try to destroy the Ukraine military. I think that's the center of gravity right now. I think that deep interjection fires, indirect with planes, missiles, and the like, and the military will be the target. They'll bypass certain cities. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. Again, you can't put 150,000 troops on the border and have them sit there and not do anything. So I do think at some point he recognizes he's got to do it. Now, he'll seal it off quickly, take control of cyber like we're seeing, but would still not surprise me, and it's the responsible thing to do. One more thing, our intelligence community has done a good job, though, of projecting what the potential is by showing these pictures. We've got to make sure that our satellite assets in space are going to be protected here. Perhaps the Chinese or someone will try to take them out. The best thing we're going to provide the Ukraine government is going to be that intel.
Yeah, it's interesting. We have a lot of the video that the Russians have put out, sort of their propaganda of all their tanks and equipment and training exercises on the border. You made an interesting point about U.S. intelligence. How much of everything that the White House is dealing with, all of the incoming intelligence, how much of that is Putin just seeing what will bite on so he can plug his own intelligence holes and where American spies are?
Well, I'm not sure we're taking Putin's intelligence. I think we're looking at our spy satellites and making the assessments from there. And I believe that our intelligence community is stepping up right now. And I think I've had a black eye the last few times, and we've had to make these kinds of assessments. The bottom line is other countries are paying attention because they're leaving Ukraine. They're seeing what we have, and they're deciding to leave as well. So we're making these decisions. We're obviously also have information that we're not putting out to the public that the president hasn't said. So I think that they're pretty much assured one way or the other whether he's going to attack or not.
It seems as though one way or the other, Putin is assured of a victory, or at least he'll claim victory, whether or not he gets something. Hey, it's good to see you, Mike. We appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thanks, Leland.
Yeah. Canada's Prime Minister says stopping anti-vaccine mandate protesters is a matter of national security. Remember, Canada's America to the north. It is another liberal democracy. And the Prime Minister says he can suspend the civil rights of effectively anybody who disagrees with him. Justin Trudeau's Emergencies Act allows his administration to freeze truckers and personal and corporate bank accounts. So if you donated money to the truckers, well, they can freeze your bank account. They can suspend the insurance on big rigs, tow them away, take away the licenses of those participating in the protests. Today, Trudeau doubled down on his claims that these protesters are violent, racist, and a threat to democracy.
We're entering the third week of illegal blockades that have been disrupting the lives of too many Canadians. Here in our capital city, families and small businesses have been enduring illegal obstruction of their neighborhoods, occupying streets, harassing people, breaking the law. This is not a peaceful protest.
Keep in mind, this is the same Canadian Prime Minister who was caught wearing blackface at a party, yet often calls other people and the protesters racist. You might remember, and obviously he stayed in office despite the scandal. Trudeau's also come under fire for glorifying communist dictator Fidel Castro. He called a larger-than-life leader who made significant improvements to the education and healthcare on his island nation. Trudeau's government largely supported Black Lives Matter protesters despite violence and looting in Montreal during the summer of 2020. Listen to the treatment the truckers, who, as far as we can tell in our reporting there in Ottawa and along the Windsor border, the U.S. border has shown, have been entirely peaceful. This is how Trudeau describes the peaceful protesters.
My message to anyone, the protesters, occupiers, this has to come to an end. And it has to come to an end real quick. And if it doesn't come to an end, you're going to have serious consequences. You'll lose your license for life. You're going to lose your car indefinitely. And we're going to throw every tool we have at you.
That is not Justin Trudeau. That was the Ontario Premier with effectively the same message. This tough talk comes as the police chief in Ottawa stepped down. He faced criticism for his handling of the protests. We bring in NewsNation senior contributor George Will, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the Washington Post. Boy, for a guy who loves Fidel Castro as Justin Trudeau does, he's taken a playbook out of Fidel's handbook.
Well, yes, what you need to know about Mr. Trudeau's devotion to liberty is right there in that celebration of a man who suffocated the Cuban people for 50 years. Well, all you need to know about Mr. Trudeau's motives in this is the fact that early on in this, he said that the truckers have unacceptable views. When talking about their behaviors, talking about their views. Now, I do not know where in the job description of the Canadian Prime Minister it says the Prime Minister shall be the arbiter of views that are acceptable or not acceptable. He is obviously armed, as many executives around the world are armed, with emergency powers if they want to use them. Now, we've seen emergency powers abused in our own country. A recent American president said there's an emergency at the southern border, therefore I'm going to take money appropriated for one thing and repurpose it for another. Joe Biden is not the first person, probably not the last, who says there's an emergency because gas prices are a little higher than they used to be and a little higher than people want them to be, and therefore he taps the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which exists for a real emergency. And it's only a matter of time, I'm afraid, until someone says, well, there's a climate emergency, and now we're going to wield executive powers on that. So executives are armed all over the world with these emergency powers that are like a loaded pistol sitting on their desk.
Yeah, they do seem all the more willing now to use the loaded pistol. The bar for losing it is so much lower. Mr. Trudeau and President Obama had a very close personal friendship and relationship. They viewed each other sort of as this duo going off to bring progressivism to the world. I'm wondering how long it is in your mind, if we continue down this slippery slope, before the arbiter of views comes to America.
Well, there's no stern border between Canada and the United States. We have a kind of common Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-American political culture. We're both descended from British colonies. So there is a danger of seepage from the north into the south. But as I say, we already see this here. Now, to be fair, the truckers are doing something that strikes at the heart of modern society. Modern society is a tissue of connections and cooperations and the flow of people, ideas, capital, goods, and services. So it's very easy for a fairly small number of people to not just inconvenience, but to put out of business a very large number of people. What makes civil disobedience civil, as Martin Luther King tirelessly and correctly told us, is the disobedient are willing to accept the punishment for breaking the law. So the truckers really can't say we're committing civil disobedience, but we should be exempt from punishment. That said, that sound bite you just gave us from that Canadian official saying we're going to take your trucks, we're going to take your car, you'll be out of your job for life, is just an example of overkill from the administrative state to the north, and the administrative state too.
Yeah, to play it out, it does seem, though, it's one thing to accept the consequences of being arrested because you're in the street and you're going to be given a trespass warning. It's another thing when they change the law on you halfway through the civil disobedience. Suddenly the calculus changes. I wanted to get your thought on a different calculus, because this is February 15th, and our resident baseball fan and producer extraordinaire Joe Ward tells me that this is the day that pitchers and catchers were supposed to report for spring training. But the war between the billionaires and the millionaires continue.
Yes, it used to be said the four most beautiful words in the English language were pitchers and catchers report. Well, they're not reporting today. If they don't report by the 6th of March, the estimate is, there won't be enough time for spring training to make the opening of the day at the end of March safe. The players need to be protected against injury by spring training. So this is the real danger, Leland, is not that fans are going to be mad, although there'll be plenty of anger. I'm afraid they're going to be indifferent. Yeah. After all, we now live in a world in which there's 7 weeks between the last NBA championship game and the first NFL preseason game. The calendar is chock full of sports now, and there are alternatives. And Major League Baseball players and owners alike would be well to remember that people now have more alternatives than they used to.
Wise words. If any are watching, feel free to tweet in. Mr. Will, good to see you as always. Happy Valentine's Day to you and your wife. I know you guys were celebrating yesterday. We'll see you next week.
Glad to see you.
Yeah. Mexican cartels are trying to sneak a new forbidden fruit into the United States. That next, plus exclusive reporting on the wall, plus a mayoral candidate almost murdered. Why the accused might look familiar to a certain MSNBC host. A Louisville gun control activist, as you see in the picture in the middle there, is now accused of attempted murder. Police say Quintez Brown tried to assassinate Democrat mayoral candidate Craig Greenberg inside his campaign office yesterday. Greenberg was not hurt, but one of the bullets actually went through his clothing. A staffer quickly closed the door to block the shots, managed to save a number of lives. Brown was later arrested with a 9mm handgun, and officers say Greenberg, his intended target, but we don't know the motive yet. The bond was set at $100,000 for attempted assassination. Brown, reportedly a socialist and BLM activist who was recognized by the Obama Foundation for his activism, well, his profile is still featured on the site, at least when we last checked. And back in 2018, MSNBC host Joy Reid touted Brown when he was 17 as a gun reform leader during a rally where both slammed Republicans for not backing gun control measures. Take a listen.
It's a difficult thing to do in a state like Kentucky, where both of our United States senators are very conservative Republicans, very much for the NRA.
We need common sense gun reform. Get rid of assault rifles. Even if we don't get gun reform, we're going to vote the people in office out, and we're going to vote people who want gun reform.
The teenagers are teaching the adults.
Just to recap for a minute, an activist who pushed taking away certain guns from law-abiding citizens get arrested for shooting and trying to assassinate a mayoral candidate. We bring in Colby Hall, founding editor of Mediaite and NewsNation producer. Colby, I feel as though if Quintez was an activist, say, against abortion and was on Fox News occasionally wearing a MAGA hat, the coverage today would be a little different.
I don't know why you'd say that. No, I think that's more than fair. I mean, clearly, this presents a really fascinating opportunity for Joy Reid to sort of note that a former guest of hers that she spoke to had this crazy conversion and I think a mental health issue, but she won't, because it won't fit the narrative that she is wedded to, and that is a constant and consistent criticism of those that are on the opposing aisle. And frankly, that's kind of where perfect, emblematic of where we are with our media is that we're not really fairly calling balls and strikes. We're just reporting news that supports our narrative and then ignoring that which does not. Now, this is a tragic story, how this guy went from being an anti-gun activist to someone who had a Glock or a 9mm and took shots at a candidate. I mean, that's a story unto itself. And as I said, I think it's pretty clear he had a mental health problem.
Yeah, at least when you read some of his tweets, it's clear that he did. Although when you hear some of the things he said in the past, it also sort of makes you question why nobody was wondering that as well. But I kind of go beyond Joy Reid. I feel as, tell me if I'm wrong, this is somebody who walked in with a gun, tried to kill the mayoral candidate. There were other people in the room. You could have had a lot more people killed. I feel like it's not just Joy Reid, right? There's a lot of the rest of the media that would have been camped out in Louisville if this had been a right-wing kid versus a kid who's from the left side of the aisle.
I mean, I think that every story is unique and nuanced on its own. And yes, I mean, this isn't, when news editors look at news, we look at things that are most unique and most surprising. And, sadly, we see some tropes pull up and the news covers that which is not that unique or that which they think is most unique. And so,
but hold on. It's not just Joy Reid, though, right? It's most unique, but it's also that fits my worldview as a news editor.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, I looked this up, and this story got barely any mention. I mean, it was covered on Fox News website. CNN covered it a couple times as a news moment, and they even had the mayoral candidate on their morning show. But for the most part, credit to you, this is a fascinating story. Now, his lawyer said that he suffered from mental health issues. He disappeared for 2 weeks and was found on a park bench in New York. Again, I think this guy's story is a fascinating one. Clearly, he's messed up in the head. But to your larger point, the media, this doesn't interest them because it's not part of. And here's an anti-gun guy that went to a gun. I mean, that's a fascinating story. But it's largely been ignored, even beyond Joy Reid and others, as you said.
We have someone watching Joy Reid right now to see if she mentions it. We'll get back to you. We'll break in immediately if that happens. But in the meantime, you think about some of the other things Joy Reid said in terms of whether people kill people or guns kill people, which is always the debate. Here's her in November of 2021 talking about Kyle Rittenhouse, another young man with a gun. Take a listen.
Should we really be surprised? The 17-year-old Proud Boys fan believed that he had the perfect right to cross state lines and protect property with the AR-15 he got because he thought it was cool. Or that hundreds of Trump supporters believed they could take it upon themselves to right the so-called wrong Trump believed had been committed against him in the election.
Do you think the difference is that is white versus black or left versus right?
Well, I think in this instance, it's a combination of the two. It's funny because there are some parts of what Joy Reid said there that I kind of agree with, that there should be better reform. But the way that it's presented is so far away from any journalistic standards. It's pure opinion and it's pure analysis. And candidly, it's what works. I mean, she's getting good numbers and getting decent ratings because there is an audience for that that tune in specifically for that. Though I say that it's deeply irresponsible and only further causes a divide.
Yeah, well, we're punching up, not down, because her numbers are more than ours. So there you go. in all fairness. But it does bring up this issue about the guns, because I'm feeling, even though somebody tried to assassinate a politician, there's not going to be a long discussion about where Quintez got his Glock.
Well, there should be, and you know, and candidly, you know, who knows? And the fact that he was for gun reform, and then it ended up with that, like, one can only imagine where that came from, and that's a deep dive. That, I mean, it's a perfect story to sort of to explore and to figure out exactly where the rubber meets the road. How does someone go from an anti-gun reform person to carrying a Glock and shooting at a mayoral candidate? That will probably reveal a lot about our current malaise right now, whether it's about sort of the social issues, the social fabric that lost this kid, or the fact that he was so easily to get a gun, or that he was motivated to take shots at a mayoral candidate. Like, what was that about? So again, as we dive deeper, that will reveal a lot. But we won't hear that. We won't hear that from the opinion media, because they'll either ignore it or they'll use it specifically to amplify their own narrative and further divide.
Well, from the anvils of the pages of "We Can't Make This Up" and "We Couldn't If We Tried," Joy Reid did lead with a gun segment tonight, Colby, about the Sandy Hook settlement, and did not discuss the shooting in Louisville. Something to read about on Mediaite.com, I am sure.
Good point.
There you go.
Good. I'll flag that story for you. Thanks for the hat tip.
Thank you, my friend. Good to see you. Coming
Thanks,
up,
Tim.
some governors and mayors ditching masks and vaccine mandates, but the White House is sticking with them. We're talking about Democrats on Democrats here. How does that play out for November? Getting avocados on your salad is going to be a little bit more expensive in the coming weeks, if you can even get them. Usually this is where we start to explain how inflation and the supply chain are causing the price hikes. And then we'll talk about how the trucking shortage is making it harder to get the avocados into the United States. But that's coming later. Avocados have their own problems. The Mexican drug cartels. Yeah, the same cartels that traffic drugs are apparently heavily involved in the export of the fruit. So much so that a cartel member felt like he could threaten a U.S. inspector. In response, the U.S. has halted all Mexican imports of avocados, and Mexican restaurants like Chipotle, big chains, are now forced to find other suppliers. Chipotle says they have several weeks worth of avocados in stock, but if the embargo lasts and you can't get the guac on your next burrito bowl, you can thank the cartels for yet another American crisis. The first, of course, is the ongoing crisis at the southern border, where they make billions smuggling drugs, bringing people into the United States, bringing guns into America as well. NewsNation's Robert Sherman is on a 2-week-long trip along the border. He joined us yesterday from San Diego. Tonight, he is in Yuma, Arizona. Behind him, one of the gaps in the border wall, with some exclusive reporting. Robert, good evening.
Good evening to you as well, Leland. Yeah, they call this the Yuma Gap because of all these gaping holes you see in the fence here. But apparently, more fencing is supposed to be coming down the pipeline. Just last month, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas was in Yuma, and 2 officials here told us that he has promised them that more fencing would be built and more of these gaps would be filled in order to help law enforcement do its job. Listen to this.
So Secretary Mayorkas recently, about a month ago, came out and said that he is going to fill in these gaps.
He knew that these areas needed to be closed up, and that was one of the commitments that he had made for our area specifically, to be able to complete the wall.
Now, the Department of Homeland Security declined to either confirm or deny this today, but if the idea of more border wall being built under this administration sounds surprising to you, here's a list of notable quotables for you from notable Democratic leaders. So you had President Biden, while he was on the campaign trails, saying, quote, not another foot of fence would be built under his administration. Then Senator Kamala Harris in 2019 called the fence a, quote, waste of money. And last year, you had Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar call the border wall, quote, xenophobic and racist. So the messaging is a bit muddy here. Is the border wall xenophobic and racist? Is it a waste of the taxpayers' money? Or is it a tool to help law enforcement do its job better? To take a page out of your book, Leland, not all 3 of those things can be true at once.
We like to say 2 things can be true at once. You make a good point. The hat trick would be difficult to come up with. Robert, as you've been down traveling along the border wall, have we seen any construction of new parts of the wall that have been promised yet?
No, no construction whatsoever. We just talked to a few people down here who said that there have been a lot of promises, There hasn't been a lot of action so far. So they're hopeful, but they're not banking on it.
And when you get down to the Rio Grande Valley, there are miles worth of wall that have been paid for that are lying on the ground, just waiting for those sections to be put up. Robert, safe travels. Great reporting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Democratic politicians are now firmly at odds with the White House, which is creating an increasingly uncomfortable situation in our nation's capital. The Democratic mayor of D.C. ended the vaccine mandate for restaurants, bars, and gyms effective today. Mask mandates end in D.C. March 1st. The White House is not happy about this. And she, the mayor of D.C., isn't alone. Blue state governors are ending mandates like they're going out of style. D.C., Illinois, California, New Jersey. Vince Colonnese of the Daily Caller joins us now. Vince, good to see you, my friend. Thank you. I'm wondering how the White House is going to explain this untenable situation of them saying mask and vaccine mandates should continue and being alone on this island of Democratic politicians who don't want to enforce it in their state.
Well, one of the key differences here is just the political calculus involved. I mean, so many of these governors that you've heard make these dramatic turns away from their COVID policies, they're up for re-election this year. So they're getting closer to that report card where voters actually get to pull the lever. And as they get closer, they realize, boy, I better make sure that they're happy or at least not angry at me. So we can only see so many pictures of Eric Garcetti in Los Angeles pretending to hold his breath when he takes his mask off at a football game. But the other side of it is, with Joe Biden, I have a prediction here, Leland. I really think that the White House is going to begin to back away from the heavy-handed recommendations involving especially masks in the coming weeks. And I know that there's been some reporting that Democrats have been urging the White House to include backing off on these COVID restrictions in the State of the Union. So that could be a turning point potentially. And this is all designed for very political reasons. The science hasn't in any way meaningfully changed. We've known about cloth masks being ineffective for a long time, but the politics very much has changed.
Yeah, specifically about kids. It's interesting that you say March 1st, State of the Union. I'll be in D.C. It'll be fun to have you on the show and be together. Chris Hahn, who's probably as politically diametrically opposed to you as could possibly be, his over-under date was May 1st. As you got closer to summer for the Biden administration to, quote unquote, declare victory. You think about in terms of declaring victory, can't do it on Build Back Better, certainly too early to do it on a Supreme Court nominee. You think you want to have something at State of the Union, it makes sense that you declare victory on COVID.
Yeah, I think that's going to be it. I think that the move is to suggest that, look, because of our good work, we have defeated COVID. The reality, of course, is COVID has defeated COVID. The idea that we were ever going to control nature itself was poppycock. And Joe Biden said that he'd shut down the virus. The opposite, of course, happened. It's so unfortunate, but naturally more people have died during his administration than under the prior. And that's just true. I mean, the cases have run roughshod over the country. And so as a result, there's a lot of natural immunity out there. And that's going to be the thing, and hopefully it is for the long term, that's going to bring us out of this.
We're at an interesting day, and I'm glad that we have you on tonight, February 15th. It's a Tuesday night. This is actually election night in California, where there's a recall election going on in San Francisco. The San Francisco School Board was evidently far too liberal, even for the folks in San Francisco. 3 of 7 board members being recalled, started by parents who oppose school closures. A lot of them are unhappy with mask mandates. 51,000 signed the petition in support. We understand that, when there's still a mask mandate in California, something like this can happen and the anger is there and the fire is burning hot. If your prediction of March 1st comes true for victory over COVID, let's get back to normal, does it still work as an issue for Republicans come Election Day in November versus February?
I think it does, and here's why. A lot of parents have organized, and we saw it in Virginia. There are literally groups that are named for parents who have organized in Virginia against the excesses of sort of tyrannical COVID policy. That's going to continue. I don't think these parents are going to forget, and I think they're going to spend a lot of time reminding people. Also, look, the longer the teachers' unions continue to stretch this out, the more damage it does to Democrats. You talk about California. Yes, Gavin Newsom has said the masks are coming off for all the adults in the state. Not true for the kids. The kids are stuck in masks because of the teacher unions. Gavin Newsom has been saying that out loud. It's not some sort of conspiracy. He says that the teachers unions have asked for more time, and that's happening there. It's happening in New York the same way. It's also happening in Washington, D.C. Muriel Bowser pulling the masks off the adults. The kids, they stay strapped up. And as a result, you're going to watch as the adults who know those kids aren't going to take too kindly to all that.
Now, you have to imagine on Wednesday morning after State of the Union what Randy Weingartner, the head of the biggest teachers union, has to say on Morning Joe. Vince, something for you to talk about, and we'll have you back to talk about it. Good to see you, my friend.
Nice to see you, Leland. Thank you.
Car dealers are now able to sell cars for more than the sticker price. How is that possible when we come back? Evidently, we gave Ford a free commercial, all 30 seconds of it. The Ford F-150 Lightning, the all-electric version of the gas-powered F-150, one of the hottest new cars on the market. They have more than 200,000 reservations. It's so hot, in fact, Ford is letting dealerships have customers sign a no-sale provision when they buy it. It stops buyers from selling the pickup truck for a profit for 1 year, or the buyers face court action that includes blocking the transfer of the title. On top of that, we understand that Ford is saying to dealerships, you can't charge that much more over sticker for these cars. The price of a new car is at a premium right now, mainly because of the computer chip shortage. The average price of a new vehicle, $46,000. That's up from 2020 when it was at 40 grand. Used cars have skyrocketed. The average is now $29,000 for a used car, up 41% from 2019. With that, we bring in Tom Maioli, who has 5 dealerships in New Jersey, our resident car dealership here on Balance. Good to see you, my friend. Hey.
How are you?
I'm good because I don't have to buy a car, but I'm not as good as you, who gets to keep selling cars for over sticker price. You think about this like with Lamborghinis or something, but Ford has got this market cornered. It's crazy.
Well, you know, it's an interesting dynamic, and as everything else in life, it's not always what it seems to be. You know, car dealers are independent businessmen, and they're franchises, and they're independent business, and you know, we have an overhead that we have to cover, and right now we're in a supply and demand issue. The manufacturer is cut the supply dramatically. We're down 60% in our supply as dealers. If you go to our lots, they're all empty. So we have to sell cars, and we have to make more profit to cover our overhead. Our overhead has not gone down. So, you know, it's an interesting dynamic right now that's going on in the car industry. But on the flip side to all of this is, you know, the manufacturer loves to point the finger at the dealer. It's always the dealer, the dealer, the dealer. They have to blame someone. But they've cut back all the incentives to the consumers, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 in incentives that were on luxury vehicles that were cut, even Ford's $2,000, that were cut back from the manufacturer. Where's that money going? And, you know, every $1,000 costs the consumer $30 out on a monthly lease payment. So if they cut $3,000, it's an extra $100 a month for a consumer to lease a car.
What I'm fascinated by is this concept of dealer adjustment. And you think about it, even for a Toyota, we looked up a Toyota SUV.
Yes.
There was an extra $3,000 in there. Normally it's $3,000 dealer adjustment down from MSRP. This is $3,000 up from MSRP. How does this end?
But that $3,000 historical adjustment that was down came from the manufacturer, and it was reimbursed to the dealer from the manufacturer. The manufacturer has taken that all away. So where's that $3,000 going today? Into the manufacturer's pocket. So it's, you know, listen, they have to point the finger at someone because there's a lot of heat in the industry. People are concerned about the cost of cars. You know, listen, transportation is the backbone of America. And
forgive me, Tom, for not really shedding a lot of tears for car dealers. I know that you don't often hear that, but forgive me. When we get to something like the Ford F-150 and this concept of a no-sale agreement and the manufacturer saying if you charge too much of a premium, we're going to take certain inventory away. Have we ever been in this place? It feels like uncharted territory.
No, it's totally uncharted territories. And honestly, you know, it's interesting because according to franchise laws across the country, they're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to take inventory away from a dealer and have a dealer force a dealer to price a vehicle a certain way or run their business a certain way. But they're doing it. And they're doing it because right now they're in uncharted territories, and they have the leverage right now because we're in a time frame, a snapshot in time where we have a supply and demand issue.
You had one of the great
it's basic
lines.
Economics.
You had one of the great lines of all time. You said it's like musical chairs, and pretty soon the music's going to end.
Yes.
And you're going to have a lot of people
It's gonna end.
with a car worth way more, that they paid way more than it's worth. Where in the
That's
song
happening.
are we?
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's coming. The day of reckoning is coming. The question is when. And, listen, they have to start manufacturing chips. They have to start manufacturing cars. People have to get back to work, and production has to get up. And things will get back to normal. But we're not there yet.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like we're anywhere close. If the Chinese get frisky with Taiwan, that's not going to help. Hey, Tom, good to see you. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, good to see you.
All right, let the good times roll. We'll be right back. Live pictures downtown Kyiv, Ukraine. All is quiet in the capital of that country. Sunrise there is in 4 hours. There had been talk that this was D-Day for a Russian invasion Wednesday. As the sun comes up, we'll see if that happens or if Vladimir Putin does indeed blink. Images from the front right now where you can see this coming from the Ministry of Defense from the Russians of their training drills and their propaganda video. There's no reason to think that the Russians are backing down in any way. And there's no indications that they've moved any of their forces off the front line. There's only so long that you can keep tanks and men and equipment on the front lines before either you have to invade or you pull back. And that is the point we are really at, is did President Biden's speech today give Vladimir Putin enough fear and enough reason to pause? Vladimir Putin, who is one of the longest-serving dictators and also one of the richest, has that decision to make. We'll cover it tomorrow. Dan Abrams is next. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.